What is up, everybody? We're on day 154 of our Bible in a Year series. We are continuing on in the book of Job, and we are some good stuff today, some interesting stuff today. So we've seen a lot of back and forth between Job and his friends on how Job has been acting and what he has said, and can Job defending himself and wanting to be able to plead his case before God and all this other stuff. Today, we see someone, and he kind of appears out of nowhere. Um, his name is Elihu. Elihu? I don't know how to say it. But he kind of appears out of nowhere. And there's a couple things that really stand out about what he says and what he does. So you can, first of all, his priority is defending God, not making Job feel good. He does not care about Job's feelings. His priority is defending God. Um, but he also he has some words to share for Job's friends as well. Um, he's not mentioned earlier on. He's not mentioned in like the prologue or when Job's friends are mentioned or any of that. And he does seem to kind of come out of nowhere. So it's an interesting character. Maybe a character worth exploring more if you're interested in that. And I mean, you can find, I'm sure, other stuff, people talking about him specifically, and it's going to be conjecture, not based on actual scripture, but it could still be interesting to do at some point. But we will jump straight into it. Chapter 32. So these three men quit answering Job. Oh, I'll say too that this, so it's longer. We're actually going to break up what he says. He has um, a response here, and then he has a direct address to Job. I believe starting in the next chapter, and it continues on for a little bit. So we are going to break up his speaking into 2 days. We'll get the first part of it today and finish it up tomorrow. But he leads directly into God responding to Job, which is good. Good stuff. So, chapter 32. So these three men quit answering Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then Elihu, son of Barachel, the Buzite, from the family of Ram, became angry. He was angry at Job because he had justified himself rather than God. He was also angry at Job's three friends because they had failed to refute him and yet had condemned him. Now Elihu had waited to speak to Job because they were all older than he. But when he saw that the three men could not answer Job, he became angry. So Elihu, son of Barachel the Buzite, replied, I am young in years while you are old. Therefore I was timid and afraid to tell you what I know. I thought that age would speak and maturity should teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in a person, the breath from the Almighty that gives anyone understanding. It is not only the old who are wise, or the elderly who understand how to judge. Therefore I say, listen to me, I too will declare what I know. Look, I waited for your conclusions, I listened to your insights. As you sought for words, I paid close attention to you, yet no one provided Job wrong, or proved Job wrong. Not one of you refuted his arguments. So do not claim we have found wisdom. Let God deal with him, not man. He's got a fire burning. Verse 14. But Job has not directed his argument to me, and I will not respond to him with your arguments. Job's friends are dismayed and can no longer answer. Words have left them. Should I continue to wait now that they are silent? Now that they stand there and no longer answer, I too will answer. Yes, I will tell what I know, for I am full of words, and my spirit compels me to speak. My heart is like unvented wine. It is about to burst like new wineskins. I must speak so that I can find relief. I must open my lips and respond. I will be partial to no one, and I will not give anyone an undeserved title, for I do not know how to give such titles. Otherwise, my Maker would remove me in an instant. Okay, we're jumping into it. Um, so, I mean, you can see already he comes across very heated about this, but this is not a. You'll see as he talks, and from what he's already said, this is a righteous anger. He is mad that he's mad that Job's friends didn't know how to respond to Job or couldn't respond to Job, but he's also mad that his focus is defending himself, which is essentially pitting God as the bad guy. Whether Job comes straight out and says that, times it seems like he does, but whether he comes straight out and says that all the time or not, that's essentially kind of what he's doing. So, chapter 33. And this is his response directly to Job. But now, Job, pay attention to my speech and listen to all my words. I am going to open my mouth. My tongue will form words on my palate. My words come from my upright heart, and my lips speak with sincerity what they know. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Refute me if you can. Prepare your case against me. Take your stand. I am just like you before God. I was also pinched off from a piece of clay. Fear of me should not terrify you. No pressure from me should weigh you down. Surely you have spoken in my hearing, and I have heard these very words. I am pure without transgression. I am clean and have no iniquity. But he finds reasons to oppose me. He regards me as his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks. He stands watch over all my paths. He is quoting what Job said back to him. And he is something else, too, I think that's important in when you are addressing, because if there's really no way to walk out the Christian life without confronting things. You have to confront things, both inside the body and outside the body. And he has made a distinction here that is good and it is important to do if you're in leadership or looking to be. Okay, my camera froze. If you're in leadership or looking to be in leadership at some point, this is something that you should take note of. He is not standing on his own authority. He's actually pointed out that one of the reasons he did not speak up was because they were older, they had the wisdom, this implied authority because of their age that is there. And he is setting this up. He is not standing on his own authority. He's standing on the authority of Scripture. He is nothing more than a mouthpiece for what God is saying or wanting to say. Verse 12. But I tell you that you are wrong in this matter, since God is greater than man. Why do you take him to court for not answering anything a person asks? For God speaks time and again, but a person may not notice it. In a dream, a vision in the night, when the deep sleep comes over people as they slumber in their beds, he uncovers their ears and terrifies them with warnings in order to turn a person from his actions and suppress the pride of a person. God spares his soul from the pit, his life from crossing the river of death. A person may be disciplined on his bed with pain and constant distress in his bones, so that he detests bread, and his soul despises his favorite food. His flesh wastes away to nothing, and his unseen bones stick out. He draws near to the pit, and his life to the executioners. But there is an angel on his side, one mediator out of 1,000, to tell a person what is right for him, and to be gracious to him, and say, spare him from going down to the pit. I have found a ransom. Then his flesh will be healthier than in his youth, and he will return to the days of his youthful vigor. He will pray to God, and God will delight in him. That person will see his face with a shout of joy, and God will restore his righteousness to him. He will look at men and say, I have sinned and perverted what is right, yet I did not get what I deserved. He redeemed my soul from going down to the pit, and I will continue to see the light. God certainly does all these things 2 or 3 times to a person in order to turn him back from the pit, so he may shine with the light of fire. Pay attention, Job, and listen to me. Be quiet, and I will speak. But if you have something to say, answer me. Speak, for I would like to justify you. If not, then listen to me. Be quiet, and I will teach you wisdom. Okay, so no response from Job. The next one starts off with Elihu continued. So Job obviously has nothing to say. Chapter 34. Then Elihu continued, saying, Hear my words, you wise ones, and listen to me, you knowledgeable ones. Doesn't the ear test words? As the palate tastes food? Let us judge for ourselves what is right. Let us decide together what is good. For Job has declared, I am righteous, yet God has deprived me of justice. Would I lie about my case? My wound is incurable, though I am without transgression. What man is like Job? He drinks derision like water. He keeps company with evildoers and walks with the wicked men. For he has said, a man gains nothing when he becomes God's friend. Therefore listen to me, you men of understanding. It is impossible for God to do wrong, and for the Almighty to act unjustly. For he repays a person according to his deeds, and he gives him what his conduct deserves. Indeed, it is true that God does not act wickedly, and the Almighty does not pervert justice. Who gave him authority over the earth? Who put him in charge of the entire world? If he puts his mind to it, withdrew the spirit and breath he gave, every living thing would perish together, and mankind would return to the dust. If you have understanding, hear this. Listen to what I have to say. Could one who hates justice govern the world? Will you condemn the mighty righteous one? Who says to a king, worthless man, and to nobles, wicked men? God is not partial to princes and does not favor the rich over the poor, for they are all the work of his hands. They die suddenly in the middle of the night. People shudder, then pass away. Even the mighty are removed without effort. For his eyes watch over a man's ways, and he observes all his steps. There is no darkness, no deep darkness. There is no darkness, no deep darkness where evildoers can hide. God does not need to examine a person further that one should approach him in court. He shatters the mighty without an investigation and sets others in their place. Therefore he recognizes their deeds and overthrows them by night, and they are crushed in full view of the public. He strikes them for their wickedness because they turned aside from following him and did not understand any of his ways, but caused the poor to cry out to him. And he heard the outcry of the needy. But when God is silent, who can declare him guilty? When he hides his face, who can see him? Yet he watches over both individuals and nations, so that godless men should not rule or ensnare the people. Suppose someone says to God, I have endured my punishment, I will no longer act wickedly. Teach me what I cannot see. If I have done wrong, I won't do it again. Should God repay you on your terms when you have rejected his? You must choose, not I. So declare what you know. Reasonable men will say to me, along with the wise men who hear me, Job speaks without knowledge, his words without insight. If only Job were tested to the limit, because his answers are like those of wicked men, for he adds rebellion to his sin. He scornfully claps in our presence while multiplying his words against God. I just want to keep reading. That's good stuff. And it gets better. He continues on like that for a little bit, and then we have in I think it's he continues on like that for 3 more chapters, and then chapter 38 is when we see God's reply. But that's good stuff. I like Elihu. I think that's how you say his name, Elihu. I wish we knew more about him, to be honest. I wish it was kind of introduced, but maybe that's part of it too, is it shows that he's not interested in interjecting himself. He was going to let Job's friends handle this, and when they didn't, he saw that there was a lack of this being dealt with, and so he stepped up and dealt with it, which I think is something we see in a lot of younger people today. I think we see there's a lot of people who are seeing that there are things not being done right, or not being taken care of, or not being addressed, so they just do it. And I think that can be a really good thing. But let's get into our questions before I say something that's going to make people hate me even more. Chapter 1, or question 1. Elihu's youthful passion in chapter 32 contrasts with the elder's silence. How does his boldness challenge us to consider the role of fresh perspective in seeking truth, while remaining humble before God's wisdom? So I think there is part of this that is the remaining respectful. And like I said, I think his lack of interjecting himself at the beginning shows humility that maybe isn't there in the others. I would say is definitely not there in Job. But he seems to, and I mentioned this too, he addressed this first, like early on when he first started making remarks. He is not standing on his own authority. He is standing on God's authority. He pointed out he's no different than Job. He was pinched off from the clay just like Job was, and so there is a humility there of himself. I think like I said, we see that at the beginning when he doesn't step up, but then even when he does start talking, we see that humility there, and he is leaning on God. He is not trying to do things or say things of his own authority or discernment or knowledge or anything like that. He is leaning on God. And I think we need to understand that can come from anybody. I've known a lot of older people in the church who refuse to really take counsel or anything from someone who is younger than them. And there is something to be said about wisdom coming with age, experience, but there's also something to be said about a younger person can have wisdom that an older person doesn't have. We need to trust God in that. We need to have discernment, and we need to not shut people out just because of their age on either end. But yeah. Question 2. Elihu's claim in chapter 33 that God speaks through suffering to save. How might this perspective prompt us to reflect on the purpose of trials in drawing us closer to God, even when his ways seem mysterious? I mentioned this, I think it was yesterday. I might be wrong. But, there's a lot of times where people will, something will happen. Something bad will happen, and they'll be drawn back to God. And their focus will be on God. They'll be intentional about making sure, like, they're praying, they're reading the Bible, stuff like this. And then that negative thing passes, they get through that situation, and then they kind of start to ease off of it. And it's not as important of a thing anymore. And so I do think there is something to be said about sometimes that can help bring us back to God, and sometimes that can help keep us. I think there are different people that can handle things differently. Some people can make that focus or the priority stay there, the priority of God stay there despite the circumstances, and some people they tend to let it go once they are past the point of needing something. I'm not gonna act like I'm perfect with that. Obviously, I mean that's something that I've struggled with before. I definitely I make sure that I prioritize. In the past, I've made sure I prioritize reading, praying, things like that. When I'm in the middle of something, it is it's easy to, when you when you don't, let's say you don't need God, because you always need God, but when you perceive that you don't need God to fall away. I remember hearing um, Braxton Hunter one time. He was addressing a friend of his had, I think, become an atheist publicly, and someone had commented on one of his videos or social media and said something, and Braxton said that, they paid him a great compliment. They said in order for Braxton to become an atheist or to turn away from God, they would need to put him in a society that is completely secular. They need to give him a lot of money. They would need to make sure that all of his needs are met. They would need to, all of his family's needs are met, like nothing bad is going on, nothing bad is happening. And then in that situation, you might be able to get him to turn away. And so that is something I think that maybe people underestimate the value of suffering in that. Even little things is a reminder that, we ultimately are dependent on God. My a little bit of a tangent. I'll end with this. My pastor, recently we've been talking about. There's a book we've been going through called, I think it's called Abiding Dependence. But in this, he's talked about how independence is a myth. You're never truly independent. You're just choosing what you're dependent on. And that's true. And I think having those little inconveniences, even if that's all that ever pops up, that can be a reminder that you are dependent on God. Yeah. Question 3. In chapter 34, Elihu defends God's perfect justice. How does his argument invite us to wrestle with the tension between affirming God's righteousness and grappling with the apparent unfairness of suffering in our lives? I think a proper understanding of, I think I talked about yesterday, the already not yet, right? This idea that we have some of these things that we got from God, purchased through the cross, salvation, healing. We have a taste of it now, but it's not in its fullness yet. It's already here in part, but it's not here fully. I think proper understanding of that, but then also working out the fruit in your life, particularly with this, the fruit of patience. Understanding that things are not going to be perfect right now. You still live in a fallen world. That is to be expected. But then also understanding that, or trusting in God's timing in these situations, that He's not forgotten about us. He's going to, He does care for us. He loves us. He wants what is best for us, and He ultimately can turn any situation into having a positive benefit come out of it. There's something that ultimately He can bring about good from any situation. And so I think those two kind of proper understanding of those can go a long way with this idea of apparent unfairness and suffering. It's hard to deal with. It's hard to be in the middle of and deal with, but it's something we got to do. And that is something else we got to do is in this video. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate comments and seeing those and interacting as much as I can. If this has been a benefit to you, the series that we're doing, The Bible in a Year, pass it along to somebody else. If there's somebody else that maybe struggles with getting in and reading their Bible every day, or that they want to have somebody to read along with, or if you want to listen with them and then you guys can discuss or comment back and forth, or even comment in the video description or in the comment section. All that, like the purpose of this series, we want to help people stick with a daily Bible reading plan. It can be difficult. I know it can be difficult. There's been times where I've recorded like day of, and my plan was to be like a month ahead or so. And so I know life happens. It can be difficult, but if if I can stick with it, and do this every single day, and not only just read but record, discuss, edit, upload, all that. You can stick with reading a couple chapters every day, and I'm here with you through it, and that's the purpose of doing this. Tomorrow we'll be finishing Elihu. I'll call him Eli. No, Elihu's response to Job, and yeah, like I said, there's more good stuff coming. He keeps it about the same temp going forward. So good stuff. Thanks. God bless.